Hey traders, checking into the stock market today. So a reaction to the FOMC and Powell that favored the bulls. We had great top fishing and bottom fishing plays on the FOMC reaction, but in the end, the bulls end up victorious. I'll show you the charts that I'm watching for the next couple of days and what I want to see if we're going to see fear completely alleviated in the market to go back into euphoria mode. So checking in on the SPY daily time frame, we've got a new higher low set. We held the low of yesterday by 49 cents. Here we are testing resistance of 470.90, double top at the moment. But if that level breaks, all we have left is the all-time high. We are currently less than 1% from the all-time high. So we know that SPY and QQQ have been relatively strong, not the last 2 days, but on the bigger picture, right? The weekly time frame for SPY, there are no red flags. The higher low is set and we are still strong. Look at the retracement size on the weekly consolidation. It was a 50% retracement, and here we are back up testing the high. So my point is, these names don't need the bulls to convince us that they're back in control. It's been the bears that have had to prove it ever since we saw that monster bounce. And they didn't. You know, we pulled back. Yeah, the bears had control to start the week, but here we are, and bulls are just fine. Another daily higher low is set, trying to confirm the daily trend change back to the bulls. Same thing with QQQ. So it was a little bit weaker. And again, yes, the last 2 days, the bears had full control of QQQ. There's no doubt about that. But we held the low of yesterday by 25 cents. And a daily higher low is trying to shape up. And the weekly time frame, again, bigger picture, still just fine on the weekly. But there are names that are the risk on asset gauges, crypto, IWM, cannabis sector, the higher risk, higher reward places where I want proof from the bulls on those names for us to say, okay, euphoria mode. Because we know that we were in absolute euphoria mode when all of our growth names were exploding to the upside. Crypto was exploding to the upside. The USMJ sector was exploding to the upside. And that was on the tail end of the post-COVID explosion rally. So I need to see those names, those growth names, start to regain strength if I'm going to say, okay, everything is all sunshine and rainbows. The market bulls are in complete control, and we're looking at euphoria mode again. So bears have to prove it on SPY, QQQ, etc. Bulls have to prove it in IWM, cryptocurrency, MJ sector, etc. So that's where my mindset is right now as we head into the end of the year. The NASDAQ futures chart, as we know, we have our octuple resistance level coming back into play again. All of these tops. You could draw a little downtrending resistance line here or just horizontal, whatever you want to do. I'd probably just prefer horizontal levels. But all of these tops in this resistance zone, and we're heading to those levels very extended. You know, if we were certainly going to test them from here, we would expect a rejection initially. The hourly RSI would be up around 80. So that's the key from here. Do we reject yet again? Or can the bulls break that level and confirm the daily trend change and be looking right back up at the all-time high? So that's something we're watching over the next couple of days. But QQQ, daily higher low set, double bottom, 383.63. And what was I going to say? Quad witching on Friday and dividend distribution. So the SPY charts and QQQ charts, these ETFs, I'm going to be using them less over the next couple of weeks because they artificially adjust for those dividends and the futures charts don't. So we want the non-artificially adjusted versions. I guess I'll go over real quick how I traded the FOMC today, and then we'll go into the rest of our tickers. So FOMC today was the most clean technical reaction that I can ever remember seeing in the last few years. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell you. We had the low of the day. We broke it by 4 pennies, 5 pennies. That's a double bottom. So we have a double bottom level to play off of. We then bounce. What was the high of yesterday? High of yesterday on SPY was 465.74. Look where we rejected and topped out on the bounce. We rejected from the high of yesterday by 16 cents. Big pullback, just a 5-minute higher low. We need to scout a 5-minute higher low to be the result of that consolidation. We then double topped again and pulled back. Not much pullback, but enough to make a short entry, exit a partial position, and have a risk-free stop. We then had a 1-minute tightening range. It was a potential rising wedge. We saw a bull break that lacked follow through that had me a little bit cautious. And my mindset when I was watching this 1 minute pattern was, okay, cautious of the rising wedge because this double top broke straight into a big pullback. But bulls kept control as long as the little higher lows kept forming. So at that point, I said, okay, big pullback. I'm watching the potential of a rising wedge, but if 464.47 holds, the bulls are just fine. And then we knew to be watching for volatility. We're either going to break out or break down. And we ended up breaking out. So what I personally did is on QQQ, I entered a bearish position initially. And that was going off of, I was looking at this rising wedge. So I was on the 2 minute time frame. We were heading into the FOMC. So I said, all right, well, I can establish a position based on this pattern into the FOMC and place a stop and have low risk. And I fully expect to be stopped out. So it was a rising wedge. I made a bearish entry right about here and we pulled back a little bit. I'm in SQQQ. And then we made a bull move right into the FOMC before anything happened and almost stopped out there. On this initial bear reaction, I sold half of SQQQ. Stop, break even. We're either going to roll over and have a big bear reaction and I'm going to have a big winner, or the bulls are going to take over and I'm not going to lose $1. Bulls took over, didn't lose $1. Okay, stopped out, no biggie. Double bottom, low of the day, got it. At that point in time, I was watching QQQ showing me a little relative strength comparative to SPY. And I believe it was right around here. Let's see, 215. We set a higher low and a higher high, and I don't believe SPY did. We didn't. So that was enough. So here's 215, higher low, lower high. Right here at this minute, I have SQQQ pulled up, and I'm looking for another re-entry. And as soon as I recognize that, I say, well, SPY is weaker than QQQ. I'm going to go with SPXS. Entered SPXS on the double top, because again, this was SPY rejecting from the high of the day. All I'm going to do is enter bearish, and if we bust through the high of yesterday, I'll stop out with another small loss. Again, the way that I play the FOMC is I have to have levels that I'm playing off of. And in this instance, I traded SPXS. I'm looking for my post here to show my exact orders and exited half. So SPY 1 minute uptrends as short-term guide. SPY battling high of yesterday, 2:19 p.m. Top fishing does not get any easier than that. And just entered half, or entered at 1775, exited half at 1785, exited half more, another 8 minutes later. So I was just entering bearish here and exiting half, exiting 3/4. And then once the bulls proved follow through, I exited all of my short on the new high of the day. I exited that last quarter position. So that was just a nice little win. And then went long on a little 2 minute cup and handle like pattern. And it was just right here. So this was what looked like a cup and handle. So at this point in time, I'm on the long side of things and placed a stop under the 2 minute support level, but gave wiggle room because we broke it by 8 cents. I'm always giving at least 10 cents wiggle room on SPY. And we then broke out. And I sold too early into that breakout that kept going. I probably scaled out SPXL, little here, little here. And I went live. Knew I wasn't going to be watching it. But either way, it was a solid reaction. As far as, I don't often trade the FOMC reactions. I'll sometimes take a trade and I'll try a top fish and bottom fish. That's the only way I play it. I think I mentioned that in the video yesterday. I'll find a level to top fish or bottom fish, and that's it. But it was nice to get a little bit of a win in both directions. And again, nothing huge. I'm not going for a home run on a day like today. This is just a day. I had a day maker today. And that is all I'm looking for. Congrats to the bulls. I did exit my SPXS hedge that I had been in the last handful of days as well, as soon as the bulls started proving it. And I did that right at the right time before this explosion. So at this point, I am only long in my portfolio with SPY long-term no touch and a little bit of an MSOS position. But other than that, back to a nice, fresh, clean slate, as bulls had proven enough for me to take off that hedge. So SMH, bull reaction. SMH stood out as a lead bull. I should say the sector. I was watching NVDA, but the sector stood out as a lead bull all day today, throughout the weakness. And again, it was just comparative. You look at QQQ to start the day, and we see a drop in the first 20 minutes, a lower high, and then a new low of the day. And at that point in time, NVDA sees a huge move, holds the low of the day, double tops. So right here, it was showing relative strength to QQQ all morning. Then it dipped a little bit. I stopped watching at midday. And then, of course, the bullish reaction to the FOMC, it exploded to the upside again. And we are looking at the semiconductors as our lead bull sector. Cannabis is our lead bear sector. Those are on the extreme ends of the spectrum. We can just do a whole spectrum. We've got semiconductors, SPY, QQQ, all along here. XLF is more in the middle of the road. XLV, new all-time high today. It's a lead bull sector. Lead bears, we got IWM, we got crypto, we got cannabis. So you can have things in your mind. That's a nice way. I've never viewed it on a spectrum like that before in my brain, but I kind of like it. Maybe we'll get some kind of graphic where we can just have little drag points that we can just shift around based on who's stronger, who's weaker. Anyways, SMH, daily higher low set. We know the weekly chart is certainly healthy. It's a bull flag attempt. EMA 12 is support. This is our lead bull sector, looking great. If we were to reject from 315.42, it would be a lower high and it would be an equilibrium at that point, but the burden is certainly on the bears. AMD, big time move, testing resistance of 147.04, weekly right off EMA 12, looking good. And we will need a daily trend change eventually, but we got plenty of space to work with now. NVDA inverse head and shoulders watch. If we fail to break 324s, it's just a lower high, but we're looking for a trend change to set up weekly EMA 12 support here as well. EV. So Tesla, I like this 4-hour downtrend line. I forget if I talked about it yesterday, but we held it again. We broke the double bottom at 9:30 from yesterday, but only by less than $2. So we're bouncing right off that support line again. I'm watching this downtrending resistance. There's two lines that we can be watching. This one, bigger picture, or a tighter one like this. I'm interested in scouting. I've had a lot of success this year in crypto, making entries, looking for monthly higher lows, and just bottom fishing. And so I'm going to look to try and do the same on Tesla. I'm looking for a monthly higher low, and I'm looking for a spot where I can bottom fish. So if we see a big enough bounce from here, and if I start to see IWM and all these weaker sectors start to give us some strength, then I'll be watching this for an inverse head and shoulders attempt and maybe making an entry bottom fishing 925 or something along those lines. So just sticking that in the back of my mind is something to keep an eye out for a potential swing position, because it's nice and contained consolidation and the lower lows are not seeing much follow through at this point. So healthcare, just absolute explosion. Stair-step pattern, higher low every day, 9 days in a row. We're used to SPY being the one that just V-shapes to all-time highs. We knew to be watching for a weekly higher low, but certainly couldn't have anticipated just a 9-day straight rip to all-time highs from here. But definitely a lead bull sector at all-time highs. Hourly uptrend is our guide. Hourly back burner will be on watch. Tons of space for the daily higher low next time we consolidate. Financial sector didn't really do much today. And we have to see a daily trend change confirmed. So higher low trying to form. Bulls must break 39.48 to confirm that daily trend change. So right now, XLF is in the middle of the road. On that spectrum, it would be in the middle. We know IWM is weaker. Bear break to a fresh fear low today. Obviously responding well. Look at all these supports here. We do have a ton of price action. 209, 210, 211, 208. We bounced off of 211 today. We need an hourly trend change, right? This move's coming straight off the low. We will need an hourly trend change for follow through. And we will be looking at anything under 226.54 is just a daily lower high. If we can confirm daily trend change in our weakest sectors, that's a big boost of confidence for the broader market as a whole. We need more follow through tomorrow, right? It's a big, have I been saying right a lot? It's a big green day, but we've oftentimes seen the FOMC move erased. Big, strong, convincing FOMC reaction, and then we give it back the next couple days. So we have to ensure follow through. And again, it's burden of proof on bulls for these names, burden of proof on bears for our stronger names. And XBI, double bottom, we broke support by 4 pennies, significant bullish reaction. Anything under 117.14 is just a daily lower high. But again, if our weakest sectors start to show us strength, it will be meaningful. Daily trend changes still needed in a lot of places, but a great day for the bulls. Silver, I'm liking this, drew this yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, but bounced right off support, rejecting right from resistance. This is 2 weeks old at this point, 3 weeks old, and just a beautiful channel with tons of plays off both support and resistance. So this is a guide to be keeping an eye on. Metals broke bear, but did see a significant bounce. The daily lower highs remain our guides. The dollar daily higher lows remain our guides. Double top, but we have to lose the daily higher lows for bears to prove anything. And the bulls have to break the lower highs in the metals for the bulls to prove anything. So let's see how we settle in for the rest of the week. Let's see if we get a Christmas rally and watch our weaker sectors for signs of confidence returning. Feel free to ask any questions. Do good things. See you tomorrow. Chapter 8, story time. So we left off from the hot spring, and I actually heard about that hot spring. Like I said, you get these tips from just people in the same kind of traveler lifestyle, and that was from another group that I interacted with. They said, hey, you should check out these hot springs. And from there, I went to those hot springs, and then someone in those hot springs said, hey, you should check out Ice Lake Basin. And I'll point out Ice Lake Basin in one of the next chapters, not this one, but that was a highlight of the trip as well. So it was just this string of consistent recommendations that were on point. So I like this picture a lot. Really cool to be able to see the trail winding the whole way through the fields with the mountains in the background. These are just more spots coming down from Conundrum Hot Springs, and I believe I went to Telluride next, but had to skip my way across and stay in some other spots. And again, when you're in this expanse of a place surrounded by mountains that make you feel minuscule and you are by yourself, it is pretty powerful. Fresh creeks everywhere for fresh water. I drank from all these creeks with my little filter bag that I showed in chapter 1 and never got any kind of sickness, only felt perfect from the water that I was drinking. This spot stood out to me, so I had to take some pictures. This is just some BLM land, Bureau of Land Management. It's publicly owned. You can camp wherever you want off the road. So it's just dirt roads going through national forests or going through other big expanses of land. And they're nice to cut through rather than go on highways. If you want to take the longer scenic route, nice to drive through. Some of the places that I took my little Honda Civic are astounding that I did not get stuck. But literally driving under a mile an hour and just, navigating these big boulders and rocks on these trails, definitely at this age, I probably would not be risking it, but glad that I did because I never had any issues. But this spot specifically, camped here. This is near Vail and Breckenridge in Colorado. And again, just pulling off the road and camping, but ended up, nice little bunny dude, ended up having a lucid dream experience there. Well, partially lucid dream and partially a moose experience. That was my campsite right next to another creek running by. So I tented that night and I was sleeping and I woke up to the sound of something very big sniffing the back of my tent. And I could tell it was very big by the size of the breaths of the sniffing and rustling the back of my tent. So I'm awake and it's behind me. I'm facing the other way. I'm facing the entrance. So I just don't move. I make note of where my bear spray is and where my knife is just in case, but frozen to a degree and trying to, become aware of my surroundings and being alert and then just patiently waiting. And it was a full moon, or not a full moon, but a very bright moon. And slowly around the side of the tent, a giant moose walks in front of me. And then I saw another moose on the other side. And then I ended up seeing another smaller moose as well. And it's interesting to me because moose are fairly solitary animals. So the whole time I'm watching this, I'm thinking, am I dreaming? Because this whole trip I'm going through lucid dreaming experiences and I'm experimenting with it. And, this is a moment for me that was the most eerie, not eerie, that's the wrong word, but it was the longest it took me to determine whether I was dreaming or whether it was reality in my life. And I was literally sitting there, I'm doing reality checks. I'm saying, okay, I'm seeing this. It feels really magical and mystical. I don't exactly know what's going on. And I just was constantly doing these reality checks and pinching myself. And eventually they walked, they came up and they sniffed my fire and they walked on. And I got to a point where I said, all right, I am definitely awake. This definitely is reality. I got to that very clear point in my consciousness. And then there were other animals around too. I don't know if it was deer or what, but there was a whole lot of activity going on. Then in the morning, I went over to the fire pit that had some sand around it. I could not find a hoof print to save my life. And I should have been able to find one in the sense that I saw where the moose went up and he lowered down and he sniffed my fire and then they kept going. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, I didn't have the evidence afterwards, but I know that I reached the conclusion, this is reality, that just happened. And I was awake for a solid hour after that. So it's not like I was, just fading in and out of dreamland. So that will always stand out as a mysterious, mystical encounter that I had with moose. And it was the first encounter with moose on this trip. I encountered another moose in Utah that we'll get to eventually. Had another lucid dreaming experience on this trip, which was a little bit concerning, where I pitched a tent and I slept in it, and it was early in the daytime. I must have gone to sleep at 5 o'clock. It was still light, and I think it was just a nap. But I laid down and I napped, and I had a lucid dream. And I woke up in my tent, exactly where I slept, exactly in the environment that I put my tent up in. And I woke up to someone running up to my tent and jumping down. And I forget the word that they said, but it was either danger or lookout or something along those lines. And so I woke up, that happened, and then I woke up after that person did that. So had the reoccurring, wake up in the same exact spot. One of them, I woke up inside a dream and that happened. And then I woke up in reality. And yet again, my senses are completely heightened. And I'm looking around like, all right, is something about to go down? Is that a premonition? And I actually am very surprised at myself because I didn't leave or move or anything. I stayed there almost because I was curious to see, is that a premonition? Is something going to happen? And I was certainly on high alert and I waited it out, but nothing ever happened. But that was probably the most intense or the most fearful or the most on edge that I was on the entire trip. So if you're interested in lucid dreaming, I got an intro to lucid dreaming video on the YouTube channel. A lot of you have already checked that out. And we'll check off where we're going next. I believe Utah. Great spot. See you then.